Hi again. This is the bonus video that I said I'd put together that goes hand in hand with the video regarding prioritization. And the idea of this video is what I want to do is tell a story, which is a true story, which may help people to understand what I was trying to say on the prioritization video about the impact of important and less urgent and trying to stop it from going into the important and urgent. So I'm going to do it this way by telling the story of what actually happened. Many years ago on a training course, I was covering off prioritization as part of that training course. And one of the individuals I just happened to notice smiled when I was talking about it. So over the coffee break, I just happened to say, by the way, did I touch a nerve or something? I saw you smiling when I was talking about the prioritization. And he started to laugh. And he said, yeah, he said, it's just that my role, he said, I could relate to everything he was saying because of my role. So I said, well, what is your role? What do you do? And this person worked for a very, very large organization. And one of his roles, one of his jobs was to put tenders together when the company needed something. So let's assume for a second, and this is what he was saying to me, let's assume the company needed a 20,000 square feet warehouse built. His role was to put the request for tender together for that and then to place that on what's called a tender website for people who are interested in that kind of thing to be able to then look and say, okay, we can do that, let's apply for this. So for those of you who are used to doing tenders, you'll know exactly what I mean. For those of you who have not, I will try and explain the process. So the process is that the company decide they want something, they put a tender together, they put it up on a tender's website, and people then apply. But the first step in the application is people have to do what's called an expression of interest, which is literally getting onto the website saying, okay, my name is Frank O'Toole, my email address is info@premiertrainingcourses.co.uk. What happens then is automatically, so that takes me seconds, but automatically then what happens is I will receive automated email all the tender documents and everything I need to know about the tender. In terms of the time that takes, it takes me seconds. But in terms of the time that people are allowed to do that, they're allowed to do that for the first 7 days. So once it goes onto the website, there's a 7-day period where people can express an interest. After that 7-day period, then it goes on to another period of time. So if I try and explain the periods of time, so the first period of time is, so let's say the 2nd of April is when somebody puts up this request for tender. So between the 2nd of April, and the 9th of April, people then have that time where they can actually put in an expression of interest. Takes seconds, that's all. But normally there is a deadline for the actual tender then to be in. And normally that deadline could be about 10 weeks from the initial date. So let's say it's the 2nd of April today. So the tender deadline would be on something like that would be maybe, let's say, April, May, June, July. Let's say the 10th of July. So the tender deadline for this would be the 10th of July at 12 noon. And this individual said that he puts the tenders together, and on the 10th of July, or whenever the deadline is coming up that morning, what he does is he goes to his office, and he showed me where his office is, and he said, and I look out of my window, and he said, okay, it's 12 noon is the deadline. He said, what time do you think the tenders come in? On the last day, at the 10th of July, what time? And I said, I really don't know. I said, I assume fairly late because otherwise you wouldn't be telling me this. And he said, well, I stand here, he said, from about 11:15 onwards, and I have a coffee and I do bits of work I can do standing up, and I look out the window. And he said, between probably 11:30, 11:45, he said, I see couriers, I see people running, he said, I see people on bikes, he said, I see motorbikes, he said, I see loads and loads of people coming in, running at the last minute, within the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, putting these tenders into our reception. He said, now the reality is that people have had 10, 11 weeks to do this, but they come in at the very, very last minute. He said, and the problem with that, he said, is then when I look at these tenders, he said the majority of them will actually have mistakes because people have been working on what you called the red zone, the important and urgent, and they're full of mistakes. He said, because people have just waited. He said, so it's absolutely unbelievable that what you said on the training course is so true with regards to what I see in everyday life. You see, the silly thing about these is that they've been sitting on somebody's to-do list in the important and not urgent box probably for 9-10 weeks. From the 2nd of April, or whatever the date was I said, I can't remember now, to the 9th of July. And then all of a sudden on the 9th of July, they've moved from this side over to the important urgent, and there's a panic, there's a rush, there's stress, all of these things. So that's the true story. I hope it's kind of helped you to understand that's exactly what people do, because we are a nation of people that tend to look and say, okay, we'll put it on the long finger, we'll procrastinate, we'll do it, but don't always get it done. The other thing that was interesting was the statistics he gave me. He asked me another question, and the question was, out of the people that expressed an interest, how many of them actually turned into a tender? I didn't know the answer, but I was amazed. The answer was 7%. Now that means 93% of people or companies decided, okay, we won't do this, but I don't believe that. What I believe is that 93% of the companies looked and said, yes, we will do this, but a certain percentage of them said, okay, it's not for us. And then a certain percentage said, yes, it is for us, but never actually got round to it because other things got in the way and life took over. But it's an amazing statistic that only, out of all the people that expressed an interest, which takes seconds, only 7% of them turned into a tender. Out of that 7%, the majority of them, probably 98% I think it was, he said, come in the last 20 minutes. And they've been sitting on somebody's desk for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I hope that helps to explain, and I hope that you can understand what I'm saying there and try to hit things when they're important and less urgent to avoid them moving into the important and urgent. Again, feel free to share this video like all the others, and speak to you soon.